Hi, MS Translators. My name is Brett Drummond. I am a co-founder and chief science communicator at MStranslate, and today I am back with you for another MStranslate research summary video where we're going to be discussing a very interesting study that has just been published trying to explain the link between Epstein-Barr virus and the development of MS. So let's get to it. All right, so this is research that has just come out, driven by the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, in Sweden. It's a really dense paper. There is a lot of information. They've done a lot of different experiments to try and understand the link between Epstein-Barr virus and the development of MS. We're just going to break down some of the key points in this. I'm going to be doing a live video in the not too distant future because there's been a couple of papers that have come out about EBV, and so I want to discuss them and answer your questions. So this video is just going to be going through a couple of the key points. So as many of you are probably aware, recent studies over the past couple of years have indicated that Epstein-Barr virus or exposure to Epstein-Barr virus is necessary for the development of MS. I've got countless times where we've discussed this before, so I won't go into detail with that in this video. But what the question is now around Epstein-Barr virus is what is actually happening after exposure to the virus that in some people causes the development of MS. So while we know that exposure to this virus is really important, we also know that it's a commonly experienced virus. 90 to 95% of the general population are exposed to this virus, though most people don't go on to develop MS. So researchers are now trying to work out what is it that leads to the development of MS in some people. So I'm just going to show an image here up on the screen, which is the graphical abstract from this paper. This paper is currently open access, so we can share this and you can access the paper yourselves through the link under the video. If we start on the left of this image with the title Multiple Sclerosis, this is basically looking at examining a theory behind how the viral infection may lead to MS. And this theory is called molecular mimicry. Essentially what this means is that the immune system responds to the virus in exactly the way that you would expect it to respond. Get exposed to the virus, specific cells in the immune system that target the virus become activated, and they start to then attack the virus to protect you from getting sick. What happens in molecular mimicry is that these cells that respond against the virus also recognize parts of ourselves. And in terms of MS, what's been looked at here is parts of the myelin sheath. And there have actually been a few other studies previously that have shown this process to be something that can occur in people living with MS. And this paper here has added to the story. So what you can see on the left is that they're looking at two proteins. You can see the word EBNA1, and under that you can see ANO2. So EBNA1 is a protein that comes from the virus. And ANO2 stands for anoctamin 2. That's a protein that's found in the brain and central nervous system. And so what this is showing between the green and the blue is that these proteins, parts of these proteins, are quite similar. And so what that means is they've shown for both antibodies and T cells, they can cross-react. So the cells that have been generated to respond to the virus can also react and respond against this self protein. And so this is suggesting that this may be one way that after exposure to the virus, you start to get that autoimmune response happening because those cells can respond to this anoctamin 2 protein. And taking this a little bit further then, so they've shown that in people living with MS, that these cells, they can find these cells that do respond against that protein. They also wanted to see on the right-hand side of this image, what does this cause in a disease setting? And so this was looking at an animal model of MS, EAE, or experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. And looking at the graph here is really the important part. What they showed was that if they injected these mice with Anoctamin 2 beforehand and then initiated the disease, the mice that had been injected with Noctamin 2 had far worse disease severity. And they saw this across a number of different things. They had worse clinical disease. The disease had an earlier onset, and the mice would have increased inflammation in their brain. They actually experienced some different sort of symptoms, and they had a decreased survival. So this indicates that if you have an immune response against Anoctamin 2, the ones that they've shown the viral proteins can cross-react with, then that can also inflame an MS-like disease. So these are some really interesting pieces of the puzzle. As I said, they went on and they did a lot more experiments working out exactly what part of the proteins cross-reacted, what sort of responses were generated from the immune system when they tested that in a laboratory setting. But I don't think we need to go into that now. The key things are that this is another paper that's highlighted that molecular mimicry can exist, where immune cells reacting against Epstein-Barr virus can also react against self-proteins that could be implicated in MS. And interestingly, in this paper as well, they've shown that when you have an immune response generated against this self-protein, it does lead to worse disease in this animal model. So if you do have any questions, please do publish them below the video in the comment section, and I'll make sure that I respond to them as quickly as possible. There is another paper that's come out on this. We'll also be doing a summary of that other EBV paper in the near future as well. And as I said, we'll be looking to do some live videos on this in the near future. Thanks, everyone.